Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout their business career and share them with us as well. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and that will be in the show notes below as well. On today's show, though, our special guest today is Stuart Knight. He's the owner of the Human Connection Group, providing keynotes, courses, team building events, conferences, programs, etc., to organizations who are aimed to increase revenue by leveling up with love. So, Stuart, it's great to have you on the show today, and I want to start off with a question I always ask, and it is this: if you were able to go back in time to when you started your very first business, what's the biggest piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Oh, such a great question, Jason. For me, there are so many. I think that the first thing I would have probably told myself, based on what I know now, is to have created systems.
Mm.
Because, I feel like I moonlighted as an entrepreneur for about 20 years, just based
Yeah.
on like raw talent, energy, drive, you name it. But when I started realizing the power of a marketing system, a sales system, an operations system, and how all those systems interact with each other, I started realizing that all of a sudden you can put yourself into a situation where success isn't surprising. And I
Mm.
think this is one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is that they go out there and they'll say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a post on LinkedIn today. And then the next day they say, you know what? I'm just going to make a phone call to a few old contacts and start doing some networking. And they're just jumping all over the place, which is a mistake that I made myself. When you put yourself under the umbrella of a system, it is essentially something that guides you into realizing the exact actions you need to take on a daily basis. And as I read in this great book that many of your listeners have probably read, The E Myth, one thing I took away from that, which I thought was so fantastic, was that he said, if you have a system that is extraordinary, it makes ordinary people become extraordinary. And I thought, yeah, damn it, why didn't I create systems, 30 years ago?
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. I was actually speaking with someone a couple days ago, and they'd mentioned something along the same lines, but they said you have to have your daily protocols in place. And I don't hear that word protocol used very often. We use systems and routines and all that. And I love that because if you're looking at a nuclear power plant as an example, if those protocols aren't followed, bad things happen. You know,
Yeah, that's a good point.
so yeah,
Yeah, you can almost
yeah,
even use like parenting as a similar thing, right? Which is if your children get out of line with their routine of brushing their teeth, going to bed, or whatever it may
yeah,
be, they end up becoming a disaster. And I think that's a great way that your past guest put it, which is to say, what is the baseline? What is it that I have to check? What are the boxes I have to check every single day? And then once those are checked, I can then go into perhaps some of the other creative areas.
yeah. I love it. I just such a great thing for people, and we can't hear it enough because I think, as you said, the better systems we have in place, it helps create ordinary people to become great, which is phenomenal. One of the
Hmm.
things I'd love to hear, Stuart, is um, there's a particular, I say if, there always is one somewhere in our business life, but what one particular challenge was extremely hard for you, maybe somewhat overwhelming. You think, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? But when you look back at it, it's created some incredible lessons and helped you get to where you go. So the question is this: what was that biggest
Right.
challenge, and what was the lesson you learned from that?
Well, I mean, obviously, as an entrepreneur, there are so many, but I have that classic entrepreneurial story of how far in debt I went. So I, at one point, at the age of 28, and I'm 52 now, I was $250,000 in personal debt. And I was convinced that there's no way I'm going to be able to get out of this. And I remember actually walking across the kitchen in this apartment that I was renting at that time, and I sat down on the kitchen floor. It was almost like involuntary, like this some force, some God just pushed me and made me sit on the ground. And I looked up at the ceiling and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm done. it's over. I've tapped into every resource I can possibly think of. I'm never going to get through this. And I remember at that time that, the stories of that I had read of people who had done great things with their lives. And I had remembered that in those stories, people had always had some version of a story where they'd come to the end of their rope, and it was then that they kept on going just a little bit further. And I thought, well, all of these individuals I'm trying to emulate, so I'm going to just go one step further, even though I think that today is my last day in business. And then the next day, you wake up and you realize that you didn't die, you're still going, you're still here. And you keep that attitude to take you to the next day and to the next week and the next month. And then I remember the day when I had that moment where I had whittled the amount of money that I owed down to $20,000. And I was about to go on a vacation off to Thailand the next day. And I owed my brother $20,000. And we're all out having a Christmas dinner at a restaurant. And everyone's, we're paying the bill, we're about to leave. And I said, oh, one last thing. And I turned to him and I said, I gave him a certified check for $20,000. And I said, I am now debt free. And so what did that teach me? It taught me that even when you think you've come to the end of your rope, or when you think that the world is so devastating, you have so much more in you than you think. You just need to breathe, calm down, and realize that if you do just stick to a plan, you can get out of this. And so since then, anytime I've faced any hurdle in business, I've always, remembered that moment where I thought this is rock bottom, and realized that you have so much more to you than you give yourself credit for, and to tap into that and you'll get through.
Yeah, I love it, man. Such great, powerful, just pearls of wisdom that you've shared there, which is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Um, what's one of the biggest things that you see right now with the clients you work with that is a common thread of, let's say, a challenge or just mistakes they're making? And what's one piece of advice that you would give to help other business owners overcome that?
So I think the biggest thing, and I was just talking about this with somebody this morning, is how people are getting into, as I'm calling it, the AI panic.
Mm,
And they all believe that if they don't get their entire team becoming experts in ChatGPT by next Friday, that they are going to fail and that everyone else is going to get ahead of them. And I would caution organizations to recognize that obviously you would have to be living under a rock to not know that AI has become the big game changer. But to have the patience and the courage to embrace AI, but to not do it in a panic, because it's likely that you will spend a lot of money and a lot of time making a lot of AI changes within your organization that within about 6 months from now, you're going to have to go and change.
yeah.
So I would say just stay calm and recognize that the one thing that is always the thing you can rely on the most is your people. And so while exploring the ways that AI can influence your business in a positive way, make sure that you're still investing in the one thing that got you here. And that is your people. Make sure they're still feeling engaged. Make sure that they're still speaking to each other. There's still, great morale within the organization. Make sure that the backbone of your business, you're not forgetting to still stay tapped into that while you explore AI. And so this is a
Mm,
mistake I'm seeing a lot of organizations make. And you look back in the history of time, whether it was the advent of the internet, or whether it was Y2K, or even just the introduction of the cell phone, companies have constantly struggled and gone crazy trying to trip over themselves, trying to fix a problem, and not just having the patience to relax and just sit with it and let the dust settle, and then you will be the one that comes out on top. So don't do the AI panic, and double down on your people.
yeah, I love it. I love it. I think it's really, really good advice. So I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know. Well, actually, I've never asked this question, but I'm really curious because I have been in a health journey for my life, and I don't know what you're going to answer to this. But for anyone that's just listening and not watching the video of this, you won't see what Stuart looks like. But when you said you're 52, I was actually blown away because you look like you're in your late 30s, early 40s, right?
Oh, thank you.
So, my question is this: as entrepreneurs, oftentimes, and we focus in on business, and that's the big thing where it is, and family and things. But oftentimes, we let our health go. And I don't know if you have a particular health routine or if it's just genetics that you look young. I don't know,
Right.
but What advice would you give to entrepreneurs to take care of their health, be able to look after themselves so that they don't have that normal presidential look where, someone goes in looking one way and now
Right.
4 years later, they're like 50 years older?
Yeah. I mean, I think that our health, obviously, there's all the key markers that I don't even have to mention. Everyone knows about good sleep and exercise and eating well. But the one thing that I think a lot of people miss is investing equally into their social relationships and to
Mm,
recognize that when you are filled up that way and you're genuinely connecting on a meaningful level with your buddies over beers and wings once a week, or your partner and like sitting around having a glass of wine and just talking about life, or your neighbor or your colleagues, and not just going and talking about the weather, but rather talking about like what matters. And I
mm,
have discovered that the more I invest in those types of relationships, the more it impacts my health in a positive way. And in fact, it's not even a belief system. And all the science really does point to it is that when you have, I mean, they can actually now better predict how long you're going to live and whether or not you are be susceptible to disease by understanding the strength of your human relationships better than they can by knowing whether or not how much you exercise, what you eat, and whether or not you smoke cigarettes. Our
wow.
social connections are now better indicators of our longevity than those other three, in fact, combined. In fact, Harvard came out with a study where they discovered that loneliness, which is not having friends, it's just not being connected to the people you know. They discovered that the physiological impact that loneliness has on our lives is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes per day.
Wow.
So, and I could give you a thousand more studies that are, that fall into this because, of course, human connection is our jam.
Yeah.
But I think that it's the one thing people miss is that they're like, if I just get all the work done, once I get all the emails out there, when I have all the meetings, if I have even an ounce of energy at the end of the day, I'll go out for a beer with my buddy and I'll ask them questions that allow us to have a meaningful connection. Whereas I always now tell people to reverse that, to make that the first thing you do in the day. And then you will
Mm,
go into your day with greater energy and you will have essentially what you're doing is you're having a positive impact on your immune system, your ability to respond to disease, your circadian rhythm, your sleep. Do a deep dive. I say that to your readers into the research of what social connection can do for you, and I think it
yeah.
really genuinely does keep you young.
That's amazing. I love that answer. Definitely was very different than what I thought you'd answer with,
Mhm.
but that's incredible. Well, over the next, say, 1 to 2 years, what are the goals that you're wanting to achieve in the business?
Well, we just recently realized and had a bit of an epiphany about this as to who we actually are, which is hilarious to me because I thought for years that I'm in the human connection space. And then I now just recently realized that we are in the space of helping organizations level up with love,
Mm,
which terrified me as soon as I realized that because I thought, oh, this should be fun. I'm going to go to my banking clients, my insurance clients, my financial planning and say, hey, I'm here to help you guys level up with love. And I worry that they're all going to run to the other side of the field and go, "What are you talking about? We don't get all woo woo and touchy feely here on those kinds of
yeah.
subjects." But I realized that it's human connection that is the way in which we level up with love. And I try to get people thinking about the idea that when you even hold the door open for a stranger, you are loving that person on a very small scale. It's not the same way you love a partner or a child, but it's still an act of love. So if that's
Mm,
true and we can do that for strangers, I want to shift the paradigm for organizations and to get them thinking, can we do acts of love here at work every single day where instead of saying to my colleague, how was your weekend? I instead then say, what was the best part of your weekend? And what I'm doing is
mm,
I'm intentionally and consciously leveling up with love based on the questions I'm choosing to ask that person, which then makes them feel more seen. And if that's
mm,
true with a colleague, it's true with a customer. I mean, we even say, love your customers, love your results. And I tell my sales groups that I speak to, you want to be somebody who recognizes that what you sell is not that much better than the competition. So what you need to do is you need to love your customer better than the competition. And
yeah.
that is what's going to make them want to buy from you as opposed to somebody else. And so my next 1 to 2 year, I guess, real focus is mainly to shift the paradigm with people in organizations to not be afraid of that word and to recognize that it's love that has built the world into the incredible thing that it is today. Even with our problems, it's still this fantastic thing that we've built as human species, and to harness that power to be more successful and to create cultural shifts and to be able to tackle the problems that any organization faces. So that's the big focus over the next couple of years, to make it so that organizations aren't afraid to use that word.
I love that. Man, what an incredible, inspirational goal that you have with the business. Absolutely amazing. Well, Stuart, if people want to find out more about you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Right now, we always point people to humanconnectiongroup.com. And where they go there, they'll see all kinds of resources, whether it's a course or whether it's a keynote or whether it's a team building event. If people want to level up with love, humanconnectiongroup.com is the place to go.
Amazing, amazing. That is absolutely brilliant. Listen, Stuart, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And as a reminder for all the listeners, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and that will be in the show notes below.